Hi guys, and welcome to part 2 of Monty's Ironsides, and in this video I'm going to be explaining how to assemble bolt action miniatures, specifically the British Infantry. Now, when you first open your box, you're going to find two things. You're going to find lots of sprues like this, and you're going to find a leaflet like this. Now this leaflet is double-sided, and you've got a picture of a sprue and also some text on which each of the components are. And it's double-sided, but that's pretty much it really. You don't really get anything in the way of diagrams on how to explain, how to assemble your miniatures, which arms goes with which packs go with which, where those packs go on those miniatures. It's very, very basic. It kind of almost assumes a prior understanding as to how to assemble them, which is great for an experienced bolt-action modeler. You probably know exactly where things go, you've done your research, that's fine. But if you're a brand new player, it can be a little bit daunting because there's not really much to go on here. So hopefully what I'm going to be doing in this video is sharing some of the knowledge that I've built up over the last couple of years of assembling both bolt action and generic plastic miniatures, and explaining some of the pitfalls that you should avoid as well. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is explaining the tools that you'll need for assembling your bolt action miniatures. Now, when assembling your plastic miniatures, there are a few tools which you'll need to keep handy, and this includes some clippers for removing components from the sprue, a hobby knife for removing any mold lines or tabs from when you've removed them with the clippers. Alternatively, you could use a file such as this one here. You also find it quite useful if you've got a pair of tweezers for some of the more fiddly sections, and also not forgetting the plastic glue, which you will actually be using to glue your components together. Now, I would recommend using plastic glue over super glue, as it does make some of the steps later on easily, and I'll discuss those when I reach them. And of course, as well as all of your tools, you'll need a cutting mat or some other nice surface on which to work on. So once you have all your tools assembled, you can bring in the sprues themselves. So I have the two British sprues here. Now the one on the right here is the actual sprue that contains the actual infantry, contains the bodies, the arms, the heads, the equipment. This side contains all of the weaponry and a few additional items such as grenades and a few extra pouches as well. Now if I just bring in my sheet here, which I've already explained, it's very useful to keep this to hand. Whilst I already mentioned it doesn't really give you much in the way of explaining how the components go together, it does explain which components is which, and when I just flip this over, it's very useful in finding out which arms are for rifles, which arms are for SMGs, for example. Now also, if you're following along with me, I would recommend keeping this handy, as I'll be using the numbers when I remove the items from the sprue, so you know exactly which components I'm using. Now, before you even start assembling these, I would recommend that you already have an idea as to how you want to build your squad. If you watch my last video, you will understand the importance of knowing exactly what you're going to be building before you actually go ahead and do it. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to be assembling a Rifleman, so we can put this to one side for the time and just focus on this sprue first of all. Now, the best place to start off with any of these miniatures is the body and the base itself. Now, I personally just like to first of all get the body off there, get a base and glue them together, and it just gives me a really nice point to work from. Now for this tutorial I'm going to be using the body 6, which is this one over here, as this is like in a standing position. Just put the hobby knife away. Now with your clippers, what you want to do is you want to get the point as close to the actual piece itself without actually damaging the piece. I'm just going to be clipping that off there, and then off around the collar as well, and just down here at the base of the boot as well. So it gives me the actual body itself, and I'm just going to remove one of these bases off the sprue as well. That gives me a really nice starting point on which to work from. Now before we start gluing any of these components, what we need to do is we need to clean up any of the mold lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in here so you can see exactly what I'm talking about, and you can get an idea as to how to remove them. So here you can see the mold line a little bit more clearer. You can just start to see the line just running down the edge there, just where the seam was when the two halves of the mold were pressed together. Now, this is quite easy to remove. You could either use a file, but I personally prefer to use a hobby knife. And what you want to do is you want to place the blade perpendicular to the surface and just gently scrape it across like that, and that'll just remove the mold lines like so. So be very, very careful when using these hobby knives. They're extremely sharp and can create some quite nasty cuts if you're not careful. You see there, it's just removing the mold lines along the edge. And I would recommend doing this on any piece that you remove from the sprue before you actually go ahead and glue it together. As it just this will be very noticeable when you actually come to paint it if you leave these mold lines on the miniature itself. Now once you've cleaned up your components, so I've got the body here and also the base, the next step is to start doing some gluing. Now I'll bring in my plastic glue here, and all you need to do is you need to just apply a small amount of plastic glue onto the feet. You don't want too much, as it won't dry very well. It's going to be very careful how much I apply. Just a small bead on each foot, like so. Just remove any of the stringy bits. what you want to do is you want to get the base and you want to firmly place the legs onto the base like so, applying a small amount of pressure for a few seconds, and this will just give you a really nice strong bond. And once it takes hold, there we go, you can see it's glued already. So now that we've got the body, we can actually start thinking about gluing on some arms. Now I'm just going to bring in the sheet here. Now we want to have the guy so he's in a firing position. So we're going to be looking for components 17 and 18, which are the firing rifle arms, which are these two arms on the sheet, on the sprue here. Now I would highly recommend only doing one pair of arms at a time. There's no point clipping off a bunch of different arms only to find that you've mixed them up and they don't fit together properly once you actually try and fit a white rifle in there. So just do one at a time. So I'm going to be doing this pair, and also going to be clipping off one of the Lee Enfields from the sprue here. So just any of these ones here with the bayonets, or any of the bayonetless ones just down the bottom here. So as you can see, I've got my arms clipped off the sprue as well as the rifle, and I've also cleaned them up with my hobby knife, just removing any mold lines from the edges. Now the next step is to glue them onto the body that we've already got here. Now this is why plastic glue is really good for this particular model, because it gives you some movability after you've glued it, so you can still slightly adjust the pose just to get the position just right. Now the first step in gluing these arms is to take the right rifle arm, and you want to flip it over so you've got the inside of the palm, you can see just about there. We're bringing in our glue here, and just applying a small amount of glue into the inner forearm and also the hand there as well. Then we take our Lee Enfield rifle, making sure we get it the right way up, and we're just going to place it into the hand like so. Now this should fit in quite snugly. As you can see there, I'm just doing there, pressing on it ever so slightly just to get the positioning right. We don't want it to glue too securely, as we want to glue it to the body. Now whilst it's still drying, we look at the shoulder joint here, apply a small dot of glue just to the inside of the joint there, bring the body back in, and then we're going to be gluing this directly to the body like so. As you can see, it's kind of stuck to the model still, but it still allows me to get some degree of movability. And next, we're going to put that to one side. You're going to have to work quite quickly at this stage. You don't want the glue hardening too quickly. Put a little bit of glue into the left palm, like so, and a small amount onto the left arm, like I'm doing here. Bring in the rest of the body. Place the shoulder joint first. Once that's positioned, slowly bend up the arm so it's touching the rifle, and then just press them together like so. And as you can see there, we've got the rifleman holding his rifle in a quite natural position, as you can see here. Now this isn't such of a problem in later bolt action kits, because the actual arms come holding the rifles or the weapons themselves, but in the early kits such as the British bolt action, the early the American plastic kit, and also the standard German plastic kit as well, you will notice this quite a lot. So it's very important to get this technique right first of all. So now that we've glued the main body to the base and also the arms, we can actually start adding in some of the heads and also some of the equipment to the miniature as well. Now for the British, you have quite a large choice of heads to choose from. You can see we've got them all down here and two at the top there. We also get these separate helmets, and you can just pick whatever you want and just glue it down to the head. So I'm just going to be removing two of the heads here just by clipping off the neck, and then taking off on the helmets as well. Just using my clippers like I have done in the previous steps. And then the next step is to clean these up. So here we have the heads, and I've just cleaned up the mold lines as I've done with the previous steps. Now the next step is to glue the head onto the body first of all. So I've just got a small amount of glue here. I'm just going to place it into the recess in the neck. Take the head, and if it's quite fiddly for you to do, then you could always use some tweezers. Just place the head into the neck joint like so. Once it's done, you can position it, so I'm just going to twist the head slightly, just so he's looking down the barrel like so, and you can see him aiming at his target. Now once the glue is dried slightly for the neck joint, so you can then glue on the helmet. I'm just taking the helmet here, applying a small amount of glue to the inside. And you want to, if it's got a strap on here, you want to make sure this strap is at the front of the miniature. It's going to be gluing the helmet on like so, just angling it ever so slightly back, as you can see here. Now once the helmet is glued onto the miniature, the next step is going to be to glue some of the backpack and also the pouches onto the miniature as well. Now for your standard rifleman, there are 3 pieces of equipment that you'll need to glue onto him. First of all, you'll need to choose a backpack from one of these at the top here. The far right one here having the mortar, so I'd recommend using one of these 5 personally. You also have the pouch that comes with the bayonet just down here, so pick one of them, and also the entrenching tool just at the bottom as well. So make sure you clip off one of each of these 3 sections. So now that we have all 3 of the pouches cleaned up, the next step is to glue them onto the rest of the miniature. And the first step I always go for is to glue the backpack on first. So I've got my backpack here, just flipped it over, apply a small amount of glue onto the back there, should remove a small amount. Now you want to place it across the harnesses, and you can see just on the back there. You want to line it up with the 2 shoulder straps. You can see I'm just about doing here. Just press on slightly just to allow the glue to take hold. There we go, we've got the backpack, so it's ever so slightly too high at the moment, so we're going to be manoeuvring that down, keeping it central in the back, like so. So once that's dried, the next step is to glue the other 2 pouches on. Now for your miniatures, what you want to do is you want to glue the pouch that contains the entrenching tool and also the canteen to the right side of the British Infantryman, and the other pouch needs to go to the left. So if I just bring in this pouch here, small amount of glue. Just be very careful not to get my fingers in the glue. You might want to use tweezers at this point, as these can be quite fiddly. Just going to be placing these on the side like so. Just letting the canteen rest on the leg. And then similarly for the other pouch, just bring in a bit of glue. I'm just going to be placing this like so, just on the left of the hip. So there we go, there we have the actual miniature. This you can actually just leave it as it is at the moment. You don't really need to glue any other items on, but there are other grenades and other pouches that you could glue to the miniature if you so wish. Now, while for this tutorial we've only focused on the Rifleman, you could assemble your British bolt-action infantry in numerous different ways. So on the far left here, I have a guy with a Piat and he's crouching down. We also have a brain gunner and a sergeant who's also crouched down, and he's urging his troops onwards. Now, the only thing you really need to take care of is to read through the list that you've got on that kind of the basic instruction sheet. Find out exactly which of the components are for which. So there's a set of brain gunner arms, a set of Piat arms, and just using those and assembling them the same way we have done with this guy. So to sum up, I would highly recommend using plastic glue over a super glue when you're assembling your plastic miniatures. It's very easy to work with and also allows you to slightly repose any of the miniatures as well when you're assembling them. Also, make sure that you remove any mold lines from the miniatures themselves before you assemble them, as it's much easier to do it when you've just got the component than when you've already glued up the miniature. Also, make sure you only ever remove your arms from the sprue in pairs, as you don't want to mix them up and get the fitting of the arms incorrect. And finally, make sure you keep that little leaflet handy, make sure you keep it safe, so you can keep referring back to it when you want to know exactly which component is which, and then that'll make things a lot easier when assembling your British infantry. So that was my guide on how to assemble British bolt-action infantry. Now I really hope that you found it useful. Hopefully some of the tips that I've shared with you will assist you in assembling your miniatures in the future, whether they be bolt-action or just in general. Now the next video in this Monty's Ironsides series, where I'll be looking at some of the uniforms employed by the British forces around about 1944, and so I'll be doing some theory, so I'll be using some of my Osprey books here. We'll be going through those to find out different colours for uniforms and webbing and things like that before moving on to actually painting our miniatures. So do join me for that, and be sure to hit the subscribe button to be kept up to date with all of my latest content, be it bolt action, Monty's Ironsides or anything else that I do. And until next time, thanks for watching and goodbye.